Hi, and welcome to Terribly Fun Films. And we have come to the end of Dragon Con Countdown. As you're watching this, I am already at the con doing one of several bazillion things to do there. I don't specifically know which panel or actor or cosplay thing I'll be doing or seeing at whatever time you're watching this, but I'm already there. This ends Dragon Con Countdown. I hope you've enjoyed this months-long journey looking at things, starring people at this con that I hope you're also at, and if you are, come find me. Today we're doing something a little bit different, but still fits very nicely into my overall schema, I guess, in terms of what I review and that sort of thing. We're looking at something that is low budget, kind of, has iffy special effects, kind of, stars Casper Van Dien, kind of, but is not a movie, so it does not count for my Casper Van Dien month at the beginning of every single year, which again got jumped over this year solely so I could focus on doing the superhero rankings lists, which will be finished before 2017 is out. I promise you that. You listening, Shannon? It will be done. Mortal Kombat Legacy was kicked off thanks to a short film that's like 8 or so minutes long, written and directed by Kevin Tacturin. I believe I'm saying his last name properly. If I'm not, I'm very sorry. It was successful enough, web series created out of it, and that first series was successful enough to spin off a season 2, and I have heard that they were going to make a season 3, but given the year's gap between season 2 and 3, I don't know if that's still being worked on or if that fell by the wayside for whatever reason. And that's a little bit sad because I would love to see season 3. This review will be a little bit different. I'm going to go through each episode and discuss their plot. I'm not going to get into the specifics of acting, directing, anything until after that, but the plot synopsis will be a little bit longer and broken down by episode, just to make things easy so you can follow everything going on. With all that out of the way, let's look at Mortal Kombat Legacy Seasons 1 and 2. First episode is Jax, Sonya, and Kano. Part 1 is also our introduction to the character Stryker. Sonya has tracked Kano to a warehouse where he and the people he works for are getting ready to run illegal weapons. It's a little more complicated than that, but you don't need all the details in terms of understanding what's going on. She phones it into Jax. Jax brings it up to their boss, Stryker. Stryker's like, no, we must stop and follow procedure. We don't have warrants, yada, yada, yada. Jax is like, but Sonya's in there. We gotta go rescue her because she's rash. And that's episode 1. Episode 2, more of the same thing. It is just part 2 of Jax, Sonya, and Kano, in which it's mostly action-oriented. They get to the warehouse, they fight, things like that. Episode 3 of Season 1 is just about Johnny Cage. He's a washed-up star. Within the movie's universe, he starred in at least one season of Power Rangers, and then launched a failed film career and is trying to stage a comeback on an action reality show that's not impressing the studio whatsoever. Episodes 4 and 5 are about Katana and Melina. Katana is a princess of Edina. Edina is one of the realms taken over by Shang Tsung once the Outworld won 10 consecutive Mortal Kombat tournaments against them. She was young enough to believe that he, Shao Tsung, was always her dad, and does not know the truth of what happened to her dad or where her sister, who has kind of a reptile mouth, comes from. Episode 6 actually opens with a not a warning, but a introductory text statement from writer-director Kevin Tactoran about how he feels this is his interpretation of the Mortal Kombat series, and how, for him, this balances the more realistic stuff with the fantasy outlandish elements. It's about Raiden. Raiden zaps into our world, into a mental institution where the doctors detain him. And it's about him convincing one of the inmates to help him escape. Scorpion and Sub-Zero are episodes 7 and 8. A lot about when they were younger and they were friends, but they were from warring clans, things like that. And season 1 ends with Cyrex and Sector, who cybernetically enhanced human beings illegally, and that's what Sonya was investigating in the warehouse, is the illegal shipment of the weapons grades, microchips and lasers that Kano illegally got. We see them fighting, and that's really it. Season 1 overall doesn't end too many stories. It leaves it very open-ended, which means if we never got a season 2, it would feel very weird. But we did get a season 2, and those episodes are Recruited in Macau, which is about Liu Kang. He is depressed, distraught, and just kind of bums around bars, gets really drunk, and lets people beat him up because his wife was killed. Episode 2 is the flashback of Liu Kang's life before he was down, out, and depressed. Episodes 3 and 4 are about my favorite Mortal Kombat character, Kenshi. He's a blind fighter, and it's about how he became blind, how he entered the tournament, how he met Raiden. Episode 5 sees a flashback of Katina and Melina when they are training in a sort of the countryside of Adina, and Katana may or may not have met her actual dad. Episode 6 is Johnny Cage, and this one we see how he got recruited into the tournament by Raiden and what he's currently doing in the tournament. Episodes 7 or 8 are more Scorpion and Sub-Zero stuff. Episodes 9 and 10 are mostly set in the actual tournament, and we discover why Liu Kang is now fighting for Outworld. And that's it. Those are all the episodes. Plot synopsis for each one. Again, I didn't get into that much detail because I'll do that when I discuss the writing, directing, that sort of thing. But hopefully that gives you an idea of what the show overall between its 2 seasons is about. Season 1, writing and directing, is really good. The first few episodes are solid with really great action, but only okay writing. I'd say it's between episodes 4, maybe 5, that the show really finds its footing in how to deliver this information and keep up with all the introductions of these characters, the new interpretations of the characters, and that sort of thing. That's not really an issue, given that it is, in fact, a TV show. Let it find its footing, let it find its natural course of telling things. From episode 6, which is the one about Raiden onward, the show gets really, really good. It finally figured out its structure, how to balance the more realistic take with the fantasy elements you have to have if you're doing Mortal Kombat. And it gets really great from there on out. The biggest flaw in terms of the writing is we don't end anything. And again, this was picked up to be a show based on a short film, and I get they were hoping for a season 2, but some sort of roundup would be very nice, very good to have, and you wouldn't need to kill off all the stories, just a few of them, but we don't get that much closure on anybody at all, except kind of sort of for Scorpion. His friendship and then eventual rivalry with Sub-Zero is the most emotionally engaging from the get-go, and it's the only one that feels at least mostly complete by the end of Season 1. Season 2's biggest flaw, aside from having the same sort of open-ended thing, is that Jax and Sonya are not in it at all. Stryker is. Stryker has a very minor role in Season 1, but now he's in Outworld. He's fighting in Adina alongside Johnny Cage and Raiden and all these others. And maybe the planned Season 3, if it ever comes around, is going to bring Jax and Sonya back. But it's a weird omission, and given that there's not a Season 3, it's hard to overlook their absence. And I do feel what's initially engaging to us about the show, as in the first 2 episodes of Season 1 are all about them, it does not come to a head in a satisfactory manner for those characters. I grant that there's a point where Sonya kind of gets a little bit of comeuppance in the tail end of episode 2, but they do leave it open so it can continue, and it never does, and that's a bit frustrating. With that being said, I feel Season 2 is the stronger, more interesting season. Johnny Cage believing he's crazy is a lot of fun. Getting to see the tournament and Outworld and all that stuff does lend itself to more episodic feel, so it doesn't feel quite so choppy like the first season, which again does eventually find its footing. And again, Season 2 doesn't have the burden of needing to figure out certain things that they were able to figure out in Season 1, so I'm not putting Season 1's writing down whatsoever. There are some growing pains in that season, though. Lots of dialogue is strictly exposition. It's well delivered, and it sounds realistic enough, but I would say between 10 episodes of that season, 90% of it is strictly there to deliver exposition for the audience to know certain things. And it kind of feels that way. I would say the exception to that is the entirety of episode 6 about Raiden. All of Season 2 feels like it was written as one long thing, and then they just filmed it and then sliced it up at the right moments. Whereas Season 1 feels like it was written as episodes, and they were trying to figure that out. I think the format of this is where we need to end, this is how we're going to write it, and then slicing it into the episodes works a little bit more. Again, I don't know if I wasn't part of production, I'm not sure that's how they actually did it, but that's how it feels, and it feels more cohesive in that regard. Production of this stuff must have been real interesting. As stated, this was a web show. And a web show traditionally does not have as much money pumped into it as a proper TV show, meaning something that would air on ABC, NBC, what the fuck ever. And so it's low budget in that regard. And given how many characters need to look weird or different, reptile mouths, special effects, scorpion tails coming out of their hands, things like that. There's a lot going into that. But given the studio and the backing for it, and that Mortal Kombat's a well-known property, it actually had a higher budget than other web series. It's also a little bit more ambitious than other web series that I've seen, to be fair. So it's low budget, and for what it is, not completely low budget at the same time, which is an interesting dynamic. And I think that comes into play in the directing, because Kevin Catron, who was the director of all 19 or 20 episodes, that would 20 including Rebirth, is really good. The special effects at times look hokey. The green screen, very obvious, especially in Season 1. The fire effects are not that good. The freezing effects for Sub-Zero, though, are really awesome. And the original way they made Melina's mouth look using CGI, not good. They redesigned it for season 2 and it looks way better, but still. And some of the teleportation and jumping through dimensions effects are... But the action is so well done. The action is so utterly kick-ass that I doubt too many people will honestly be complaining that this doesn't look as good as something like Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, which was a big budget studio film. I think people will overlook the minor flaws and that sort of thing, given what it is and given how great the direction is. The editing, the directing, the pacing, really good stuff. Even when it feels like we're just being exposition and we get all the action-heavy stuff in the next episode, be it episodes 1 and 2, or 2 episodes where we're meeting Katana and Melina, that sort of thing. The action is very well done, and it's very clear that Mr. Tactorin has a great understanding of what makes action work, how to film it, all that jazz. Playing Jax is Michael Jai White, and I can't imagine better casting, and maybe it's just my love of Michael Jai White, even in the terrible Spawn film. That makes me really wish he was in season 2, but I don't know, but he's great. He's a lot of fun. The action, again, he's a great action star. He understands it, and directing helps. Jerry Ryan, probably best known for her role on Voyager? One of the Star Trek seasons I've never seen. Is Sonya Blade, and she too, real kick-ass, real good, very empathetic right away. Her character, you feel for her character, you want to see her character get revenge, that sort of thing. Darren Shalavi plays Kano, and he's alright. The character's a bit one note, so some of that is in the writing. But he feels like just mini boss number 1 versus big baddie. He's a little threatening, not terribly so, especially given that between episodes 1 and 2 he captures Sonya and he tortures her, but we don't see any of that. So I feel like some of the threat that he's meant to pose is diminished by that. The actor, he's fine in the action scene. His delivery of the dialogue, believable, but he sounds a bit tired, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Striker, who does carry over into season 2, is played by Tomo Pinkett. His take of the put-upon boss, police chief, police sergeant type character is a lot of fun, and you understand his point of view fairly well, and I think he gets that gruffness across nicely. In season 1, Johnny Cage is played by Matt Mullins, who is definitely the weakest actor in all of season 1. He's meant to be sort of desperate and wanting to find a new way of presenting people. He's no longer the teenager from Power Rangers. Again, within the movie's context, he was in the season, at least one season of Power Rangers. And that he's now an adult and an action star, but people aren't buying it. And instead of sounding like desperate and just needing to do this, he sounds kind of whiny. Especially given how things end up for his character at the end of the first episode he's in. Some of that is the writing, I grant, but he doesn't really bring anything to make you like him at all. He's not that funny, his timing's only okay, not particularly good. Also in that same episode is Shang Tsung, played by Johnson Fan, and he's pretty good. I like him quite a bit as this character. He is replaced, though, by the actor who played Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat the movie, the 90s film, in Season 2, which we'll get to later on. Alex Pavanek plays Shao Kahn, and he's big, and he's intimidating, and he's a wonderful villain. I like him quite a bit. I think he works really well. I think even when he is delivering just exposition and threats that he's believable, and you think he will in fact carry these out, and he will in fact kill Katana's mom, just so she can't turn Katana against her. He's a fun bad guy, and the actor brings a lot of that. Katana is played by Samantha Tajia, and she's really good. I like her quite a bit. Definitely one of the best actors here. Julian Tran plays Melina, and she's pretty good. The chemistry she has with Samantha Jo as sisters, although technically Melina's a clone of her, really good. But she's perhaps the only person in the movie who has an action sequence that she's not that good in. It's a small action sequence to be sure, but it just doesn't deliver there. Which is sad, as I think she delivers elsewhere with the character, just not there. And this is an action series based around the action scene, so that just doesn't totally fit. Queen Sindel, Katana's mom, is played by Patrice King, and she's really good. Very heartbroken, very empathetic, very stubborn. Brings a lot to the character given her, like, 4 scenes. And you instantly get why she hates Shao Kahn. You instantly get why she would try to sacrifice herself for her daughter's sake, things like that. There was a character I didn't mention in the synopsis of the show because he's actually the focal point of Rebirth, and maybe I should have watched that and at least brought it up. That's Baraka. And he's played by Fraser Actison, and he's really good. He's terrifying. He plays it as this energetic, crazed ball of just fury, and it's a really cool performance. Playing Raiden is Ryan Robbins, and I like him a lot. He definitely gives one of the most well-rounded performances in Season 1, if not the absolute best. His Raiden is desperate to get out. Desperate to warn people he believes can help him in his fight against Outworld and Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung. And that desperation comes across in every scene. In the episode we meet Raiden, the other main patient we meet is named Blue. She's played by Tracy Spardakos, and she's amazing. She has very limited screen time. Again, she doesn't come back for Season 2. She's just in 1 episode. But she's so good. Like, when she finds him, she goes, "Wait, don't hurt him. He's mine." You, like, believe she might actually be unhinged. You don't totally know what she's going to do. You don't know why she instantly believes him. But you buy that she does have a connection. And so that's the writing. A lot of that, though, just has to do with their chemistry. How she plays the character. How willing she is to go that extra mile. Ian Anthony Dale is Hanzo Hashi, aka Scorpion, and Kavan Ojiza is Sub-Zero, and they're great. Their chemistry, great. Their fight scenes, great. They're fantastic. I love these two together. Their interplay, their hatred for each other, it leaps off the screen with these two, and it's, I don't know if satisfying is the right term, but it is such a cool thing to watch. When Shang Tsung is convincing Scorpion to come work for him, you feel the rage in Scorpion just right there, boiling, and it's great. The final episode of Season 1 involves Cyrax and Sector. They are played by Peter Shinkodo and Shane Warren Jones. Shane Warren Jones is Cyrax, Peter Shinkodo is Sector. And they are human for about half of it, and then there's CGI, and the CGI does not work. I should point that out right now. We'll get more into the special effects in a little bit. As the humans, they're both just fine. As the cyborgs in the suits and the CGI, I'm not going to blame them for anything wrong with the CGI, so I guess they're okay. They also don't appear in season 2, so they don't have much to work with. They're fine. The episode works fine. Season 2 sees quite a few shakeups to the cast. I will go over the new characters first, the characters we're being introduced to, and then I'll get into who is now cast as whom. Brian T plays Liu Kang, and he's amazing. He's great. From the first scene onward, you get that he's down and out, and he used to be an amazing fighter, and he really brings a level of empathy to the character that makes you want to root for him. And when he does agree to fight for Outworld, you're shocked and appalled. Mark Dacakis is in this film. He's Kung Lao, who is of the order Liu Kang left. Mark Dacakis is a lot of fun. His introduction is only okay. He sounds really stiff when T.S. Liu Kang enters the monastery. Doesn't totally work, but in the next episode and in the fight scenes, he's fantastic. Dan Southworth plays Kenshi, the blind fighting man, and I really like his performance. It's a little bit overacting at times, especially right after he loses his eyesight. But the character's a bit crazy to begin with, and I think that kind of works for it. Playing his mentor, for lack of a better term, Ermic, is Kim Do Nguyen, and he's pretty good. Not fantastic. Really good in the fight scenes, only okay with the dialogue. Playing Liu Kang's fiancée Molly, Caroline Tudor is very good. Delivers what she needs to in her small amount of screen time, is very fun to watch. That's it for new characters, I believe. At least new main characters. There's some side characters. But here's the new cast. As Johnny Cage is Casper Van Dien, and he's way better than Matt Mullins in season 1. Way better. He brings a much more energetic, comedic take to it, and he's way more likable, way less punchable. Maybe it's just my love of Casper Van Dien, or maybe it's that the showrunners finally figured out the proper way of doing everything, because episode 3 of season 1 is the Johnny Cage episode. But it's a way more engaging characterization. It's a lot more fun. It's way more clever. But what really matters is that he makes you like the character, something sorely lacking in season 1. And so when he's describing what happened to him with Fang, Melina's character, he just nicknamed her Fangs because of her crazy mouth. It's really funny, and you really believe the friendship he and Stryker get into. Casper Van Dien is, of course, the reason I'm doing this, because he's going to be at Dragon Con, which means Dina Meyer, Patrick Muldoon, and Casper Van Dien are all going to be there, which is freaking awesome. I'm excited to get to meet Casper Van Dien again, and I'm really excited to meet those two for the first time. While the character of Stryker does roll over into season 2, the actor does not. He's now played by Eric Jacobus, and in my mind, I didn't realize this. Like, when watching them back to back as I did, I clearly noticed that it was a different actor. I must have. But they do so much of the same thing in terms of the mannerisms, the way they play the character, and their cadence, speaking voice, that sort of thing, that it just never occurred to me to look, I guess, or at least look harder than it wasn't the same person. So it's a fine performance. Good performance that has a lot involved in with the gets a lot out of the relationship with Johnny Cage and the really fun reactions to Outworld. Sub-Zero is now played by Eric Steinberg, and he's good. I liked the actor in season 1 a little bit more, personally speaking. Felt he was a little more threatening, but I think the action here is tighter and better paced, so maybe the new actor has something to do with that. I'm not sure. Raiden is now played by David Lee McGuinness, and I really like him as well. Maybe it's just the way that the writer-director Kevin Tactron seems to understand this character perhaps better than any of the other Mortal Kombat characters on the show. Maybe it's just that because Raiden is a god and he knows everything going on, he has the job of bringing everybody together, which grants him some really funny moments. And maybe it's just because, I'm not sure, Raiden's always a character I've enjoyed in the Mortal Kombat show, but I thought both versions of the character, both actors of the character work really well. Katana is still played by Samantha Joe, and as Mileena, we now have Michelle Lee, who's way better. She's so much better. Way more action scenes for these two characters now, and it's much more believable, much more intense, much more engaging. In every possible respect, it's a better performance. And finally, for changing up the cast, Kari Haruki Tagawa is now Shang Tsung, and he was Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat, directed by Paul W. Sanderson, and I really like that callback. And he's fine. He does a perfectly good job. I think if they just left it with the other actor, I don't know if he was simply unavailable or if Mr. Tagawa became available or what, but I believe either actor if we flipped either one for each other in either season, they would have done equally as good of a job. That's not to say either one gives a bad performance, it's just that they both give the same performance in different ways. Mr. Tagawa is a bit more threatening, but the first actor, Stefan, is a bit more devious, so he's playing a bit more like underhanded versus overt evil, if that makes sense. Overall, between the two seasons, I think it's a lot of fun to watch. The action is great, as you've heard me state. Special effects, though, are a bit of a mixed bag. Again, budget on this was high for being a web series, but not high given all the fantastical elements going into it, and that makes things look a little bit odd. Even in Season 2, we still don't end everything. Johnny Cage and Stryker and Raiden, all these others are still in that world. They're still fighting the tournament. And as good as the action is, as interesting as this take on the myth that surrounds the Mortal Kombat game series is, one has to question why bother watching this, because there is no end sight. There is nothing in terms of it being a show to keep you returning, because the stories are not over. This excludes Sub-Zero and Scorpion stories. Between all their episodes, between both seasons, they have a great arc. Straight from the get-go through the end of Season 2, their arc is fantastic, and there's summary resolution each time. But they are not the only characters that to play here. They were the main characters. Each episode was devoted to them, and then we just followed some characters who came in and out of their lives or popped into the tournament every once in a while. Maybe that would be something. But unless Season 3 is being made right now, again, I don't know. I am going to say this. It's well made. It finds its footing early on enough to not be that off-putting in terms of exposition, heavy dialogue, and such. That if you love Mortal Kombat, this is a fantastic watch. If you love any of the actors in it, Casper Van Dien, Eric Steinberg, Mark Dukakis, things like that, give this a watch. It is a handsomely mounted production that takes their limited budget and puts it into the things that matter. Cool action scenes, things like that. But we're looking at this in terms of writing, plot, and story execution. It is lacking because we don't wrap anything up. The lack of Jackson Sonya and Kano in Season 2 hurts it because those are introductory characters. The lack of resolution between Katana and Mileena's fighting amongst themselves about Kitana remembering who her actual dad is and no longer following Shang Tsung and Shao Kahn is an issue. The resolution of Liu Kang either being redeemed after deciding to fight for Outworld or dying because he decided to fight for Outworld. There isn't one. We don't know. There's no character arc to most of these people. And that does hurt it. And as sad as that may be, and as much as we can't totally hold it against them by the nature of being a show, if you're looking at it for characters and that sort of thing, outside of being a Mortal Kombat related property, you maybe won't get too much out of it. But if you love Mortal Kombat, if you just want some really cool action tinged with fantasy stuff, people being frozen, fire, jumping through parallel dimensions, time stopping, you'll get really great action. You'll get some really solid acting for the most part, especially in Season 2. Really solid acting. And you will get some fun. But I do believe this is only for die-hard Mortal Kombat fans. Luckily, I'm a die-hard Mortal Kombat fan. I love Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat's an amazing series. But I'm mostly okay with that. It's a bit frustrating. I would love to see at least one more season just to wrap things up. Don't introduce new characters. There are lots of new characters that have not been used yet. I realize that. But just tie up what we have, because I want to see that. If you love Mortal Kombat, go for it. If you love fantasy-flavored action, go for it. If you don't, you might not get anything out of it unless you love Casper Van Dien or Mark Dacakis. So, as always, thank you for watching. I've been your host, Bobby, and I'll see you after Dragon Con.